or this roadmap to wellness. Encompasses everything, but it's the same fix for everything, including our gut. Is just working on your body, how we're moving, getting stability, and yeah, I know going to the gym, you're already moving a lot, but that's why I do what I do here. I put the science behind it. I've spent a lot of years learning how to breathe and move correctly, teaching foundation training, studying strength training, studying what works. This is what I think is the evolution of chiropractic, how we fix these neurological things caused by the muscles and the joints. So ultimately, I'm encouraging you to join me for class, do a one-on-one. Once you got it, you understand it, you can work on it at home. It becomes easier. But bringing symmetry, bringing strength, that's the goal. Because yeah, we can do detoxes and all that. That's all important. Right diet's important. Chiropractic's important. But that can't come. We can't put the cart before the horse. So we need that tensegrity, that muscular stability during motion to help absorb injuries and all that. But it's also important for your gut being expansive. So your bladder's not getting crushed. Your intestines aren't getting crushed. There's movement. That breath is getting down there. It's helping move things through the gastrointestinal system. That's key, and it's not talked about enough. That's so important. And we'll look at the diaphragm and how it affects the esophagus going to the stomach, and even looking at the pelvic floor and how these are important, gateways for food to move through, just so we have motion, so there's not stagnation and putrefaction and dysbiosis and disease resulting from that. So we're putting all these other things before functional movement. Learning how to move. You're doing it all day long. You're breathing 30,000 times a day. It's important. You bend 4,000 times a day. We need to be squatting more. We need to be like other cultures. They're squatting all the time, and we're not. We have terrible hip mobility, and terrible diseases go along with that. And it's easy to see this tip of the iceberg, and realizing that there's so much below, and that's hard for people to believe that there's much. It's far worse than you realize, than the symptoms are telling you. So that little bit of back pain, okay, there's bigger problems. Every time I feel a little tweak, I'm saying, okay, there's a bigger problem here. I need to really be vigilant, not just ignoring it, not just waiting for it to go away, but taking action. We're not doing great in the United States compared to other countries. 43rd as far as diet-related deaths. So we'll kind of take it from the top here. Horace Fletcher was a guy that said, "Eat somewhat less, but eat it more. Would you be hardy beyond fourscore? Eat not at all in worried mood, or suffer harm from the best of food. Don't gobble your food, but Fletcherize. Each more so you eat, if you'd be wise. Don't cause your blood pressure e'er to rise by prizing your menu by its size." So what he promoted was this Fletcherization, is chewing, lots of chewing. So that's great for your muscles. It's great for your neck stability. And when the neck fails, we lose that muscular stability in the neck. The low back has issues. And I see it so much in training when the neck goes into extension because of weakness in the front of the neck. The lower back and the hips don't work correctly. So just by chewing our food alone, you can feel it. Really trying to chew it on from rough beef jerky, that you'll feel that front of the neck working. And there's other devices like the Jazzercise that can supplement this. Maybe if you got some teeth that aren't the greatest. But overall, just chew your food more. Just always putting stuff in a blender. Yeah, that helps your absorption. That's all important. We'll talk about that. But also just getting that strength in the jaw. You'll feel temporal muscles working. It's great for your cranial bones. It helps that cerebral spinal fluid move. That's all important stuff. So increasing surface area is the duh one. Right? You have potato, you chop it into French fries. Think about how long it takes to bake a potato versus how long it takes to cook a French fry. That's the idea there. Just think about your body, how long it's going to take. It's a larger chunk of food, how harder it's going to be to break that down and absorb any nutrients from it. So chewing does that. And then it also allows for the salivary amylase, which is going to help break down your starches like a potato. And then we got lingual lipase, which begins the digestion of fats. Because fats are one of the hardest things to break down. They get the most calories. So we want to start that process in the mouth, and the longer it's in there, the more that's going to take place to help your gallbladder out and your bile and all those other enzymes once it gets to the intestines. Like we talked about, building strength, the scalene muscles, facial muscles, the platysma, all important because the back of the neck, the traps are so tight, restricted. But also, your tongue and the cranial nerves, they sense tastes and sweetness, saltiness, bitterness, different nerves, and that's all going to stimulate your gut, let it know what's coming in. We know, like, okay, we taste sugar, your body's going to spike insulin because it's preparing to bring that glucose into the cells. So the same thing with fats and other things your body's going to, protein's going to prepare. Working that jaw, important, getting that neck strength, so important for the rest of the body. How do you strengthen your neck? Well, chewing is one way, but also we teach foundational neck stability work. Just not letting the neck move as you're doing things like deadlifts and squats just throughout the day. And then training those muscles to open up the joints, be tall, be expansive. It's tensegrity again. It's the same idea. So breathing through the nose is important because it helps get that breath down to that gut. Forces that diaphragm, that pelvic floor to work more. So mouth breathing is linked to poor gut health, pelvic floor and diaphragm dysfunction, and both should move together with breathing to help stabilize the torso, especially if we're lifting heavy. Our nose, natural filter, so it's better to at least inhale from there. And this little trick here, the tongue pulled to the roof of your mouth with nasal breathing also helps lift the back of the skull by inhibiting the signals from the spinal accessory nerve. That spinal accessory nerve goes to our SCMs, show those big side front neck muscles, and our trapezius. So they both kind of work together with that spinal accessory nerve to pull the back of the skull down. So we're always trying to lengthen that back and then pull the chin in. A lot of people try to do that naturally, but then they come in this extension posture. And that's why the breath is good to work with that, not just drive the neck back. Take that breath, you expand your torso. You're going to limit this extension here in the spine where it's going to create too much curve. So by just expanding here, breathing into the back of the ribs, you're spreading that diaphragm out, and then working the neck. That's the best of both worlds, and it sets the hips up well to move. So we all know about the fight or the flight. That comes with mouth breathing as well. That's that sympathetic state, and your gut does not work well in the sympathetic state. We need parasympathetic. We need vagus. Vagus stimulates the lungs, even the middle of the neck. We talk about our nerves there, C3, 4, and 5, through the phrenic nerve, go to your diaphragm. So that's right in that middle curve of the neck where it likes to extend. So we open that up. We get that pressure off those nerves. The diaphragm is going to work much better, that long cylindrical neck. So this is all going to, that fight or flight, chest breathing, where I'm flaring the ribs. People think, oh, I know how to breathe. And they always show me this kind of like opera singer chest or this yoga breath. Like, okay, that's not what we're talking about. It's not that you should be doing this decompression breathing all the time, this intra-abdominal breathing, but we're trying to create space because there's just so much restriction. And then we find a nice middle of the ground. So when you're doing your involuntary breathing, you just have more of a midway breath. So we're not always just thrusting the ribs forward. So it feels like you're creating a lot of space. It feels like your chest is opening, but I call it the false chest. You're not really expanding your chest. You're not really opening your shoulders. You're just extending your spine, where I showed you here, this thoracolumbar area. And that really, honestly, jams your shoulders down. It feels like you're opening up your chest. You're not. So if you think, open up in between your shoulder blades, expand that area, that's the expansion we need. And it just feels good. Your hips naturally just come out. The glutes shut off, get wider, and that's what's important for the pelvic floor, is not letting those glutes laterally rotate and compress. So all this slows digestion, it causes constipation, toxic buildup of undigested food. So our vagus nerve helps stimulate the parasympathetic sympathetic state. It's 95% parasympathetic. That's your rest and digest. So breathing alone, nasal breathing, that expansive decompression breathing is going to help stimulate that vagus nerve. It's going to get you into the parasympathetic state. And then we have peristalsis, which is motility, which is caused by the involuntary contractions of the muscles that help move food through your gastrointestinal tract. And that's key, right? So that autonomic nervous system is just automatically happening. So we're thinking about things that we're not thinking about. So we're helping by doing some voluntary breathing, helps trigger that autonomic nervous system, create different feedback loops so we can get us out of that sympathetic state. Sympathetic state is important for certain times. That's it. They're always trying to lull themselves into the parasympathetic state. Sometimes your body has this angst, letting you know it needs action. You need to breathe in that kind of aggressive style breath, that aggressive expansion. That's what it is. It's not a yoga breath. I'm trying to calm down. It's not a great space. You're actually giving your body that stimulus it's craving, which is fight, flight. Lifting weights, that kind of stuff really stimulates this expansive style breathing. That's why it's so important. And that gives that body that stimulus it's craving. That actually helps shut off the sympathetic state sometimes better than always just try to yoga breath your way out of it. There's our big SCM there in teal. You can see how it goes back of the skull, attaching to the front of the rib cage there, your sternum and your clavicle. And that's that spinal accessory nerve we mentioned before. So it's essential for neck and shoulder movement. It's the intrinsic musculature of the larynx and the sensitive afferences of the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid musculature. So the hypoglossal nerve does all actions of the tongue, except for the one we mentioned before, which is that palatoglossus, which elevates the tongue, and that's innervated by the vagus nerve. So that's very interesting. Every muscle is that cranial nerve 12, except for that lip. You think about your sphenoid bone, which is the roof of your sinuses. So we're lifting our tongue. I'm trying to expand. You'll feel that sphenoid bone kind of open up here. So sphenoid kind of right there. So it can get really jammed down, especially with that jaw jutting. Just that sinus space gets collapsed. So we're trying to open that all up with our breathing. Not just about the nerves, but mechanically creating space. And that big breath can help pump that cerebral spinal fluid, which is so important. It cases the brain, but also encases your spinal cord in your spine. So it helps pump it up and down the spine every time we breathe. But if it's just a shallow breath, it's not that aggressive, expansive breath, we're not going to get as much movement of that cerebral spinal fluid. So the diaphragm, probably a bit bigger than you realize, a very powerful muscle, and it's connected to our psoas muscle, our hip flexors. So when we talk about hip stability, psoas being the major stabilizer of your low back, and its connection to the diaphragm, it's just crazy. It's super important. So we're using powerful muscle. And the back of the ribs aren't as flexy, right, as the front. You have that costocardius in the front that's kind of meant to expand, and we just overuse it, right? So we need to focus on locking down, and we'll talk about how to do this a little bit better in a second with a diagram, but essentially as we exhale, you'll feel naturally your stomach will tighten, and that shrinks the front of the rib cage, which is what we want. So as it tightens, you're going to feel your hips kind of roll in as you do that, and your belly really draws in as you get all that air out. Then I can inhale, but keep that stomach tight where it was. And you'll feel, I can't get much air in, but it's going to force that expansion in between the shoulder blades. So if I just try to do that on the inhale, it doesn't always work. The ribs start thrusting. So if I exhale first, out to the mouth, out to the nose, I don't care. Then inhale, hold that strong position. You're maintaining that expansion. Again, as you exhale. So even that next breath, do 10 of these. It gets very shaky, sweaty, powerful, breaking apart a lot of restriction. So it doesn't have to be crazy kettlebell stuff. Just aggressive style breathing can be enough to help get some space and work all those intercostal muscles that are so important. Why is the diaphragm important? This is another big reason here. It's the gatekeeper, like I said. So the esophagus has to run through a little hole, and so it definitely can close off, or sometimes the stomach is coming up too much, and that sphincter isn't working as well. We get that acid flowing, and so people think it's not too much acid. We need acid. People take antacids because they think they have too much acid, but then you're cutting down on your acid. Now you can't break down your proteins. You need that acid to help break down your steak, right? This is coming in. So it's not too much acid. It's just poor positioning of the diaphragm, poor breathing, and so that's the first stage right there. That's the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. Starts the process. We got some in the mouth, but we also got the stomach really setting the stage to go into the small intestine. As soon as it goes, you can see here that duodenum. That's when we get that pancreas, all those enzymes from the pancreas, and the bile, and the gallbladder coming in at that point to help break down and absorb food in the small intestine. So all this is a very important stage, and it's important to create space. So this is our sway back posture, and I think it's a little different than most people realize. People think sway back, they're thinking big, lordotic curve. And really, you can see this person's actually lost their curve. They have this tucking, this posterior pelvic tilt of the pelvis. I think sway back, I think hips are swaying forward. They're shifted forward. That's the sway. So we get the knee locking. Anytime I see a knee locked, I know the glutes are tight. And that causes just compression of the spine, and especially this thoracic spine. So this is just a picture of one of our nerve charts. 1D is just 1T, one thoracic, one dorsal is the other name for it. So you can see a lot of our nerves that go to our organs there in our gut are all in this thoracic spine. So if we've got severe compression there, then neurologically we could have issues. So not just about the organ smash, but the spinal smash that's happening right along with it. So and again, this is all muscular issues. People think, oh, I just got to stand different, which, yeah, it's just not wrong, but that's not the fix. You have to retrain the breathing, you have to retrain the hinging, the shoulder flexion. It's all important. You got to train yourself out of this because it's all not just realigning your joints or going to the chiropractor. Chiropractor's not going to adjust this away. No way, because it's a muscular issue. It's a movement issue. You have to train your body how to move. So that is the fix, and a lot of it starts in the neck. So again, this is probably a larger conversation, but a lot of things come along here with the form closure idea. With form closure, we see that with that sway back posture, where the pelvis is just moving away. We should have this, the arrows, all our muscles are designed to hold that ilium on that. That's your sacrum bone there. So this is your pelvis. That's holding it in. Muscles are clamping it down. When we start resting on the joints, sway back posture is pure joint resty laziness. And you feel like you're trying to stand strong. The head's driving way back. That's why sometimes thinking head first can cause sway back. You're trying to have good posture, but that backward drive of the head, just overusing your traps and your neck muscles. We want to think foundation first. We want to think ground up. Hips first, breath, build into that neck strength. And here's just some more pictures of our slings, our muscular slings, which hold the body together. We have these posterior oblique slings. Think about like your outer quad to your gluteus maximus that crosses over the sacrum, connections into our lats and our right shoulder. And we can have imbalances left to right that also cause this form closure. And usually it's on one side, but I have seen people with form closure on both sides. And that's just more compression and collapse of the muscular system. And there's just no chiropractic your way out of that one, no massaging your way out of that one. It's all training. Train your body how to move again. Strengthen those slings to hold your pelvis together, lock it on the sacrum. It's all bringing things back into the center of gravity. Remember our forward sway posture. that pelvis, that center of gravity had shifted way forward, causing those knees to lock, and that just causes the compression of the spine. We get our hips underneath us. There's not that compression anymore of the spine. The pelvis needs to be that foundation underneath the spine so we can remove all that neurological stress. You can see that here with her. Both bad posture. This is our anterior pelvic tilt where it's tilting forward. This is more your sway back. And then, of course, we have like the old man posture and all that. But the fix ultimately is not focusing on these, but just getting length, getting tall. Squash some grapes beneath your heels. Lengthen up. Breathe. Fill up the back of the ribs. You can see in both these, she's pinching the shoulder blades. Both these. So they share that in common. Those shoulder blades are hugging and squeezing, and that's causing compression. That's the one thing I really hate about yoga is the constant false chest. It's a false expansion. Shoulder blades, we need to expand the front and the back. Otherwise, we're always thrusting that pelvis or just really cranking, the abs are completely shut off here in this anterior pelvic tilt. This athletic hip, I don't actually see that very often. That's like your linebacker or crazy sports. Again, more of a conversation for another time. But we have this posterior sling, longitudinal sling as well, from the skull all the way down. There's muscles here that we want to work. Feel the spine. I won't feel any muscle there in between the spinous process and the transverse process. I know there's just atrophy. There's atrophy, there's collapse. And think about that oblique sling, all these muscles attached to the pelvis, crossing over to lock it on that sacrum. That's all. And this helps too. It helps lock. It's that forced closure, that muscular stability. It's tensegrity again. It's all returning to that same idea. So these are the muscles we're trying to work in foundation training. So I have like these 3 points of stacking. I think about trying to get them all to come back at once, not one. Because if I go collarbones first, thrust the pelvis forward. If I thrust the pelvis back first, the head goes forward. So we're trying to get everything back at once. Pelvis, rib cage, collarbones. And that shifts my whole center of gravity back. I feel my weight come into my heels, ear, shoulder, hip, come into a straight line. This is our plumb line. So you can see the plumb line reference here. Nothing's where it should be, except for maybe the heel. Degeneration. I feel like I keep saying this longer conversation, but essentially it's a response to a lack of muscular stability. So joints are like, okay, muscles aren't doing their jobs. Let's create arthritis. These are all ligaments. If you look at these little osteophytes, they're gonna eventually just fuse, create a bridge. That's part of your ALL, your anterior longitudinal ligament runs from across the front of the spine. Just kind of hold these bones because they're moving all out of place, right? And that's the body's doing that as a self-defense mechanism because neurological compression is going to happen. So your body's like, well, I'd rather just be stiff as a board than not be able to feel my legs, right? Or my organs not working too. We get so focused on like the numbness in our hands. I always say this to scare people. The same nerves go to your hands, go to your heart. Same thing down the low back. Same nerves go to your legs, go into some organs too, some important ones down there. So it's another form of tensegrity. It's the bad. It's a form of stability, not tensegrity. So your body is always seeking stability. You don't give it to it. You don't give muscular stability to your body. It's going to get it on its own, and you're not going to like it. And a lot of this doesn't necessarily come with pain. It just comes with immobility. It starts a disease process, just like cancer. They don't really notice that it's happening, but it's insidious like that, where you get this a lot of this breakdown. And people get X-rays taken, they're like, "That's not my X-ray. I don't have pain there. I have arthritis, but no pain." That's why it's a terrible name. Arthritis indicates that it's inflammation, but that's why they've changed the verbiage more to degenerative disease because you're not always feeling. It's not always inflamed. It's just literally calcium. It's turning to bone. And it ain't good, right? But your body's doing, because your body's wise. Body is trying to fix what you're not fixing. You don't do the job, it's going to do it for you, and you ain't going to like it. Here's another picture of that hyperextension. The shoulder blades pinching together, and we get that rib flare. Right? Not a lot of people are walking around like this. It's more that sway back where the pelvis is forward, but it's showing this some of the variations. This would be more like our athletic, like cheerleader, I'll call them when they get the anterior pelvic tilt. So you'll see the different variations, but kind of the same thematic commonalities where there's compression of that spine. Like this, just constant downward compression. So you're like, what is the old man right? He's got some things right. The body naturally pushes the old man into that position, that rounding, full hip motion. Now it's stacking all that weight on that hip because it's trying to get pressure off the nerves. So then we could fix that head position. Now they just got to work on that posterior sling, posterior chain muscles. We call those little multifidus muscles we showed you before. And eventually they can get out of that, but it's a lot harder work once they're there for sure, because usually a lot of degeneration is set up to force them into there and not allow them to come back. So just thinking breathing again, serratus anterior. Any serratus muscles are muscles that attach to your ribs, are rib cage expander muscles. So this is the one that pulls those dang shoulder blades apart. So that lady was pinching. These are going to pull them wide. So we talked about that different technique of exhaling first to engage the abs, and then I can inhale on top of that, expand the rib cage. So that's going to limit that hyperextension. It's going to improve not just diaphragmatic breathing, but your pelvic floor is a diaphragm. Right? Even our thoracic inlet, base of the neck, call that another diaphragm if we wanted to. Look at that, it's huge. Hip flexor, so has major, so has minor. There's two. Some people are missing minor. Linked. Only muscle to attach to individual discs like that, which let you know it's important. Very important. Goes to the hip socket. Your lesser trochanter helps. It's like a rotator cuff muscle. Lock it into the hip. So as anchors the diaphragm, helps hold neutral lumbar spine. About getting angry, that angry style breath, that expansive breathing. It'll feel like you can't get a lot of air in, but it's more about opening up the ribs, using the muscles, not always just getting tons of air in. That's not going to do it alone, and it feeds that hyperextension we talked about. Get your war cry out, right? So foundation training teaches you movements you need for your everyday life. Things like yoga can be corrective at first, people feel better. Just like they're doing a chiropractic, they feel better at first. Like they really go all in on it. But they mainly teach you how to do these ceremonial poses better. Like nobody's doing Warrior One in real life, right? We want to do things that are actually going to teach us to move better in real life. Then you end up wasting your time trying to trick yourself into this peaceful state. And let me tell you something you already know. It's not peaceful out there. It's dangerous business walking out your front door. Your body is craving functional movement because all the stress you feel is telling your autonomic nervous system it's time to fight. We all need an outlet for aggression. Why not take it out on your restrictive tissues and degenerative patterns? Fight and flight, sympathetic state is natural. The best way to turn off that feedback loop is to do actually what your body wants and not lull it into that false state of parasympathetic calm, right? A lot of false chests. So yeah, it's very deceiving. That's why this is hard for people. Yoga bad? What? Chiropractic not so great in the long run? I can't go to chiropractor every week? Yeah, anything. There's no shortcuts. Maybe your mom didn't tell you. In life, there's no shortcuts. You can't cheat this system. There's only hard work, folks. You've made it this far in life. You already know that. But I'm here to remind you. There's no shortcuts. There's no fancy magical stuff. Magic wands to fix this. Just hard work. So yeah. Gatekeepers. Pelvic floor. So yeah, that can close off. Those sphincters can get closed on both ends, right? But open it all up. Get all that garbage out, and that can allow the healing process to begin. More serratus muscles for you. I like this picture because look at all those nerves. They're everywhere. You want to get pressure off them so they can function, they can talk to not just your muscles better, but your organs better. So, of course, everyone talks about the squatty potty. Yeah, that's important too. But what's more important is we're doing a challenge right now. 15 minutes a day, just flat foot squat. You're hanging out down there. So yeah, if you wanted to count your squatty potty time, um, it's not as good as just squatting. People for ancient man had a hole in the ground, right? Getting all the way down there, squat, ass to grass, like we say in the gym. But that just allows for better elimination, right? It's gross, but basic stuff right here. But also, yeah, do what I'm doing. Grab a kettlebell. Sometimes, 44-pounder, so just helping me not fall over, but also help me push me a little deeper, get some depth in my squat. But just angling those knees up, you can see how it looks like a squat. He's not doing as much work, but yeah, there's going to be more pressure on the feet there. So yeah, of course, gut pain can cause low back pain. Low back issues can cause gut pain, right? It goes both ways. Same stuff. Better foundation for the spine. All about the muscles. Make the organs happy. They're the protectors. There's the movers. There's what the nerves talk to. Nerves aren't talking to the bone. Bones just get pulled around by the muscles. Chiropractors, it's really dumb, but we don't seem to understand that. Like, oh, it must push the bone back in. Oh, the bone came back out. Silly bone. Even like subluxation, we have these idea that these subluxations just come out of place because the body is retarded. No, the body is doing that on purpose. Subluxation is your body responding to poor hip and shoulder mobility. That's all it is. It's like, okay, we have to do this. We have to do this little twist so we can make these changes so the body can function better. Little picture on the breathing here. So, we talked about the exhale. So we're exhaling here on the right, and that diaphragm comes up, and the abs contract. So this shrinks. You can see how it's shrinking the rib cage. And then on the inhale, instead of letting this front just expand so much, let the back expand. So it's kind of flipping it on its head. We're starting with the exhale. Expand the back. That just seems to help me. That's not something you have to do. That's not something how I've taught it forever. It's just something recently that's just made more sense. I really want to get that. Of course, we can get that CO2 out. That CO2 is just toxic. It's just hanging out there. We got to get it all out as much as you can. So we do want to inflate the chest in a way, and that's why there's a big chest and there's a false big chest I'm talking about. I want to actually, if you have a hand up here, the chest, you want to feel that inflate. Okay, when you inhale, you don't want to feel the ribs here inflate. That's the false big chest. That's that hyperextension. And this hand here, but right below the diaphragm, that's what I'm trying to get to draw in. So that'll definitely happen on the exhale. I can get better expansion there. And then build the inhale on top. And you're doing it with a bunch of breaths anyways. It's okay if you start with the inhale and just hit it with the exhale. It's just if you lock yourself in extension is the problem. With some people, there's lock and extension. They can't get out of it. So you gotta shake off the tension, let it relax so you can get there. So chronic inflammation, rocking around, we're on pain all the time, gut's unhappy. How do you put the fire out? Get the garbage out. Expel that toxicity. You can eat up as much kale as you want, but just firestorm down in there. You're not gonna push it, right? Gotta get it out. Stuff that can help, raking food that rakes the intestines, like your broccoli and your carrots, fibrous foods. Yeah, important to help move things along. But ain't gonna beat good old fashioned squats. Is what I'm trying to say. Here's a picture of that vagus nerve. Vagus means wander. Why? Because it's wandering about. It goes everywhere. Lastly is your enteric nervous system. We call it our second brain. It controls your immune system. So 200 to 600 million nerves in the gut. So it's working. Your brain's not controlling your immune system. It's your gut that's doing it. So gut happy, things like autoimmune diseases are going to be affected. Well, get the garbage out, immune system's going to work better. That's the quick summary there, right? Yeah, they talk to each other. That vagus nerve is going to calm the gut down. So we have bacteria inside the gut. But if anything seeps through the walls here, think about expansion. If things are fermenting and the intestine is expanding, that mucosal layer is not going to hold everything in. Little things like, that's why gluten's bad, little proteins slip through. As soon as it gets into the muscular layer, the intestine, the outer layer, your immune system, it's going to jump on it, it's going to attack it. That's where it hurts. It's actually your immune system is attacking it's foreign invaders, or even bacteria is coming out, or yeast is coming out. Yeast gets in the blood. Happens to a lot of people. Immune system attacks. Not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be in the gut. Why is it coming out? Because we're not eliminating it. We need to get it out. Get the garbage out, so that intestines aren't expanding and bloated, where they become permeable, like leaking like a sieve. Is what I'm trying to say. All right, that's all. We'll end it there. Thanks for enjoying this wonderful gut presentation.